Hey, welcome to Odd Music, episode number 345. We are live with Randy Zimmerman today.
Here I am.
Whoop.
Yeah. It's been a couple of years.
Guys, a
it has
little bit
been.
more than that, I think. Yeah. It's funny. Randy goes, I want to be on the show. I gotta do crowdfunding things. So we're gonna talk about that today. And I was like, well, yeah, you're welcome anytime. It's not that we don't think about having Randy on. We just Skype calls me up on Tuesday nights most of the time going, what are we talking about tomorrow? I was like, I don't know.
Well, Randy, I always figure, where would we fit in? Every time I turn it on, he's got a live stream going.
Yeah.
Not really. No, really. I only do 2 lives. Well, I do. I'm on Nerd Bacon too. So I guess I'm on 3. But my live streams are Sunday morning at 9 a.m. and Friday morning at 5 a.m.
So I always catch the Friday because I'm an early bird.
You're early riser. Yeah. I do 5 a.m. because I have to take the wife to work at 4:30, and the guys over in Britain, that's like 10 o'clock their time. So they're happy to come on.
Well, and that's the one where you're actually like, at least when I've caught it, I don't know if you're always doing this, but like you've been going through pages of old comics and reading them off, and then you're kind of critiquing like the artwork.
That's what we
do, and different things. Yep. And it's really fun listening to how your perspective and their perspective on these different panels and things like that.
Comics by night, folks. Thanks a lot. We go through, we try to find the classics for Friday, the stuff that we love, the stuff that inspires us, and it's been a lot of fun. It took us 12 podcasts to go through Watchmen, because we had the original Watchmen books and we had the Watchmen annotated at the same time, which shows the artwork in black and white, completely different look to the work. But it's really amazing. So now
are these all just from your personal library that you're going through these?
Yeah, I just grab a tripod and tilt the camera down and look at this, kids. Boom. You haven't seen this before, have you? Look at Mr. Jack Davis, for example. Hey, here we go. We've gone 7 episodes into Two-Fisted Tales.
Nice. Oh, wow. Now, where can they find you on there, Randy, for those?
Indie Comics Network. Okay. I'm over there. Everything's archived there. Also, the Randy Zim YouTube channel and the comic book Black Belt, because Russ Leach is on the majority of the programs. So, and if you haven't seen Russ's stuff, he does his own book called Only Death Can Save Us, but he also has done work for Doctor Who Quarterly, Ben 10, and some odd property called Batman over in European market. So. And then the 2 of us now are working on the Shadow Kingdom together.
Yeah, and we're talking about that. We got to knock out a couple quick ad reads, and then we'll get going here. So, Scott, why don't you go ahead and get us started real quick?
So we have a commercial.
Okay.
So I'm going to play that.
Awesome.
Here we go.
When it's time to hire a real estate team to help you buy or sell your biggest asset,
you want a realtor who puts in the effort to train properly to help you win.
You want a team that works hard to understand the current real estate market.
A team that attends your home inspection with you and knows how to negotiate all the potential issues that may come up.
A team that works together on all transactions, making us available anytime you need your realtor, including evenings and weekends.
A team that understands what it takes to negotiate and win when there are multiple offers on the table.
We have been training for this moment, the moment of making your real estate transaction a success.
Who are we?
We are Team Titans of Real Estate.
Team Titans is ready to put together your playbook to win in this current real estate market. Call us at 586-232-5144 and ask for Scott or Jill.
Together we can achieve more.
And there we go.
Oh. Did you find an AI site to make you a commercial?
The read over is an AI voice thing. So you type in the script, and then there's like all these different voices you can choose from, even languages, even accents. So if you wanted a British accent or Australian accent, and then all these different settings and stuff. And so it's pretty interesting, kind of scary at the same time. But the actual video part we put together, actually Jill put that together. So we're just playing with what's out there to market ourselves. And And for you customers out there who are looking to sell your house, we're trying to take everything next level. Yeah, it's going to be a crazy year with how low inventories are. And so, how do we put our clients above the competition?
All right. And then our last one is Lawrence Family Chiropractic Center, PC, located in Belleville, Michigan, Dexter, Michigan. They take great pride in providing the finest chiropractic care to each and every patient. I've gone through, they do everything. So just give them a call at 734-697-4244. This is my line at lawrenceFamilyChiropractic.com, or on Facebook, just look up Lawrence Family Chiropractic Center, PC.
There you go.
It's nothing like a properly aligned spine.
Yes.
I'm heading there today, and I definitely need it after doing the show in Indiana last week. The crappiest chairs, of course, and throws everything off, and I'll be feeling a little bit better in about 6 hours.
We're getting old enough now to start carrying our own chairs.
Yeah.
Right? I need to think about that seriously, and it's because it's definitely getting boy, those chairs are just horrible. So
we're getting younger anyway,
and we're there. The average attendee at a Comic-Con doesn't realize, like, we are in those halls like 10 hours a day and on concrete, and the chairs are like these usually crappy chairs. So it takes a toll. By Sunday, our bodies are beat up.
I did a show in Midland last weekend, Midland Mall.
Oh, the mall. Yeah.
And it was Saturday was incredible. Just jamming. Saw people I haven't seen in years and
nice,
all of that. But the thing is, I get to my space, there's no table, there's no chair. Somebody already helped themselves to it.
Oh,
so luckily I brought a table. I brought another one down for Sunday, so I was properly set up. But and I had to run over to some gaming tables that weren't quite there yet and help myself to a chair. So,
oh wow.
We set up in the middle of the mall or something, or
it took over the entire mall except for the food court. Okay. The entire interior aisles of the mall. We were back to back to each other and it was crowded. It was jammed, and there were lots of retailers there. Actually, a lot of comic book dealers, which was awesome.
I've been seeing that more. We did Great Lakes with Randy a couple weeks ago, and
that was good too. Yeah,
and the one in I did last week was in Elkhart, Indiana, which is Hall of Heroes. And that one also had a fair amount of actual comic dealers, and not just guys trying to resell their overstocks because they got a ton of variants. It's I've seen a lot more vintage stuff showing up again. Good dealers having good stuff. And I like seeing that because I get tired of going to comic book shows and there's no comic dealers.
Yeah. Speaking of Two-Fisted Tales, I was talking to a guy at the mall, just kind of leisurely going through his boxes. Boom, there's a Two-Fisted Tales. I went, holy crap, what's this doing out here? You need to have this wrapped with a board and sitting on your back wall. Those you hardly ever see an EC comic at a show. And the guy goes, have you seen my back wall? And sure enough, it was all gold, just beautiful stuff.
Yeah, I'm loving what I've been seeing out there. A lot of great stuff. And Kevin, our partner Kevin, is a real big collector, and he's been really searching for a lot of different books, and he's finding stuff here and there. And and I know so much shows he's been finding a few things, good deals on some things too. He's been surprised what he's been finding, good prices. And I know with the COVID hit, it seemed like people were like, oh, I'm bored, I got money coming in, let's just order comics, and they were buying classics. People were investing in them, and jacked the price up way high, but it started to settle back down a little bit.
Well, this is where I think the younger comic book readers out there are really missing the boat. Is for collectors, what really makes the value of something is when it's rare. And right now, that younger crowd, like on the Kickstarter we just did for Crimson Shadows, as far as quantity of sales, the vast majority bought the digital edition. And, these people like to have these digital copies, but they never buy physical copies. And, those of us who, if you have all those things from the late 80s, 90s, they're a dime a dozen. Even though they were amazing stories, the artwork was insane. Everybody has 10 pristine copies in their collection, bagged and boarded. So it's not rare to find a good copy of certain issues. But this current batch, like things like what Randy's selling through Fund My Comic, and we'll be posting the links on there soon, or Crimson Shadows, there's so much independent stuff out there. You never know what's going to hit. And I'll tell you what, 20 years from now, the stuff coming out now, that's going to be worth something because very few people will have physical copies.
It's only going to take one to get that, tip that over the edge too.
Oh,
one hot title, everybody else will start looking at it and going, "Oh, what else has been out here?"
Right.
Well,
There's
that's so much great stuff.
Yeah, I
out
knew people that
there
write
in the
comics. They
crowdfunding
did that.
market now.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
You know, people like with Walking Dead when they first hit big, where people got to know it, they're like, "Oh my god!" Then they started looking at other stuff, and that was
and at that point,
Yeah.
it had already been into the run. So like I remember setting up at Mesa Comic Con, and Robert Kirkman was down the row from me at just a little table, and nobody was really there. And and then like 6 months later, Walking Dead came out.
Yeah.
And ever since, that guy's like in Hall H at San Diego. You never see him.
Yep.
But 6 months earlier, you could have just walked up, shook his hand, bought an issue 1 off of his table.
Yeah, I bought an issue 6 from him in Chicago. Only because he had sold out through the first few, and this was when the comic was just getting popular, so it was a very slight line, but he had everything. It's like Kevin talked about. He had a chance to buy issue 1 of Walking Dead or issue 1 of Battle Pulp. He's like, Battle Pulp looks like fun.
Yeah, this will do far better than that Walking Dead series.
Yeah.
Forget that Walking Dead #1.
Yeah.
Yep. But you never know, and there's so much amazing content out there from all types of independent creators that the big companies are just missing the boat. They really are.
I'm telling you, enough time has gone by too that a lot of folks have forgotten the great stuff. That's why I love doing the podcast that I do. We pull up this book and you get kids in the chat going, "I never knew this existed." It's like, yeah, it's here.
What's the phrase? Everything old is new again.
Yeah. On Sunday, probably about 6 months back, I just went through my long box and pulled a half a dozen obscure Marvel books out, and people were freaking, "Is that an actual Marvel comic? How did that Weird World? What is that?" Monarch Starstalker, what the heck? Yeah.
Well, there was a time we had a lot of really great, which is now obscure stuff coming out that
now obscure.
It's gotten to a point. It's not just comics, but a lot of industries. So like they stick with certain little things. Like, well, this is what everybody wants, so we'll do 1 billion of the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But back then they were like, well, let's just see what works, and this goes and that goes, and you read something. Oh, this is great, and then it disappears. It's like, oh, that was a lot of fun, but didn't catch on. And then 20, 30, 40 years later, when we bring it back out again, people are like, well, that looks amazing.
Yeah. My career started in the middle of the 80s, 85, 86. And those books, those independent books that came out before Turtles and even after Turtles, before Image really started, are just long forgotten. And a lot of that stuff's real golden material. Troll Lords, Fish Police, Galaxian. There's so many great, so much great stuff out there just waiting.
Remember New England Comics? I used to look forward to getting their little catalog. The Tick and all. Like they had stuff that was obscure at the time.
Oh yeah.
And and we talked about this before. My favorite series that I used to get was what was it called? The Adventurers.
Yeah.
Like I just found it to be I loved the artwork and the story, and couldn't wait to get my New England Comics catalog so I could order these things that I couldn't get at the local shop. And and I don't know how you do it. Maybe it can't be done, but to recapture that magic of the time of collecting comics, it was so amazing.
And good luck trying to find a copy of The Adventurers anywhere.
Yeah,
that's right in that era I was speaking about. At Arrow Comics, we ran a full page ad in Comics Buyer's Guide, which is what you did there long before the internet and that. We ran an ad that had the covers for Adventurers 1, Dungeoneers 1, and the Crypt 1. It says, we want to thank the creators of these books for being a phenomenal imitation of the realm.
Yeah, that's right.
It says, and underneath we wrote, imitation's the sincerest form of flattery. Thank you so much.
That was through Arrow, was it?
Yeah, that was Arrow. We were out first.
Yeah.
85, 86 was Rome #1. Everybody else came out a year or two afterwards. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's a real Dungeons and Dragon influenced comic, Yeah.
Well, Arrow was definitely way ahead of its time back then. And it's funny when I talk to people about that, that don't know about Arrow. I'm like, you need to go back and start doing your research.
Yeah,
there's a lot of great stuff came out there. So,
well, I'm almost concluded with a series of articles at Comics Unlimited magazine that comes out from Britain, talking about the history of Arrow Comics and all of its different incarnations. I have one more to do on the current incarnation, the one that we're in now. But it's crazy when you sit and you look at the stuff that we Dead World was out long before Walking Dead. Realm was out long before all of those other fantasy books, and ElfQuest was before Realm, and it's not quite the same type of fantasy. You know, Tales from the Aniverse was out long before all of these furries started popping up. You know, you talk about Tales from the Aniverse now, and they all look at you funny, and you did what? You know. We had a Mischievous and a Ganda the duck running around. That's my next project as soon as Shadow Kingdom's done, is to put together an omnibus of collection of all of that work and all the short stories with those characters.
Nice.
Just to put it out there, crowdfund it just for folks to see it, because it's been what, 35, 40 years.
Right.
It'll be 40 years next year. Yeah.
Wow.
And Sue's back painting again, which is fun. So there'll be a Varsel's Vixen's companion volume for that fits into Anniversary. Yeah. She's already done a short story for it, and I'm hoping she's going to paint a cover for it as well.
Well, just so everybody knows, here's the arrowcomics.store.
Arrowcomics.store. Yep. It's not just me. It's a lot of other people, a lot of independent. Arrow has always been a creator-owned company, which means everybody's responsible for their own IP. Arrow is just kind of a figurehead over top of all of that. And in order to give folks one place that they can know that there's some reliable entertainment and great books to read.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more stuff coming this year too. It's crazy how it's going to look. Plus, we're waiting for final word from Diamond as to whether or not we'll be in their catalog.
Okay.
But HeroBot Zero is mine. Calico is mine. Spank is mine. That's my monkey. That's kind of my editorial cartoon. We did a shirt because Luke and I both survived COVID that said "Death Can Wait. I'm making comics."
I like that.
So,
very cool. I may have to get one of those.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Very nice. I love that. So
that is,
it's Randy's one of those two guys I'm gonna like I run into over the years doing comics. Is it's similar, like Bob over at Blue Line called me up, and I think Randy's kind of somebody. No matter how much you think you're gonna get away from the comics, you love creating comics. You can't walk away from it.
No,
it's such an addiction that it's like I'm done. I'm not gonna do it anymore. I'm tired of the industry. Screw the industry. Screw these people. And then there's Bob Hickey listening right now, so I'm bragging about it. And Bob, I remember when Bob here called me up one time. I'm like,
"Hey, Bob."
Bob. He was like, "Yeah." He goes, "It's like, what's wrong with guys like us?" I'm like, "Nothing. We just know what we love and know our passions." And I'm glad to see people like Bob still doing some things here and there. I'm glad Randy's still doing stuff. It inspires people like me. I'm sure it inspires Scott a little bit and Kevin. I mean, I started publishing comics in 2005, and
it's got to be a physical comic too. Digital doesn't count,
right?
Yeah,
because digital isn't physical. Because once you hold that comic in your hand, and anyone who's gone through a birth of a child knows that exact same feeling. It's like holding your kid.
That's
and
my
you
very
go
first
through,
one.
and you open it up, and as silly as it sounds, you smell it, you feel it, and it triggers something in you, positive or negative. You decide then if you're going to do this for the rest of your life.
Yeah, 80s kids will recognize the smell of the newsprint.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that's what
that feel of good newsprint.
Yeah,
the nice slick cover paper, all of that, and you decide then if you're going to do, and you can try to get away from it, you can try to leave, and you have to pay bills, and you go out and do whatever. And for me, I've been lucky to find work that pays my bills and still has me doing comics a lot.
But I think the key there is, I find there's two type of people in the comic industry. You have the people who are stuck in it forever, no matter what. That's us. But that's because it's a creator mindset. We are storytellers, and we have stories in us that need to come out. And then you have the people who are just purely, they're the pencil, not the pencil themselves, but they're just drawing, and that's it. But they're not really creating from within. And you find these people who were amazing artists, and like you see them at shows 30 years later, and there's not one new thing on their table. It's the same thing from 30 years ago. And those are the people where they were just gifted artists, but they didn't have the storyteller aspect to them, I think. So they were great to help convey stories of other people's, but like I think for all three of us, we're creators. And even if I have zero audience, I'm still going to be making comic books if they're just for me.
Yeah,
I got to get it out.
My style tends to be very cartoony. If you see HeroBot, that's me. That's all me, art and story. But I like to do all kinds of different stories. So you go out and find other people to do the artwork for that.
Yeah.
You know, but you have the storyteller in you never goes away.
Never does.
Yes. Well, let's share one of those right now. So I'm gonna bring this up here. This is the current fundraiser that's going on, and I'll get the link shared here.
Now, this is on Fund My Comic, and Fund My Comic was really started as a platform for people, obviously, to crowdfund their comics. You know, you don't have oddball electronic devices or strangely designed tennis shoes or whatever also on the platform to distract you. You want to buy a comic or you want to get in on a comic campaign and you're looking for a great comics, fundmycomic.com. We all go up there. We're so proud of Luke Stone, who's also part of Arrow Comics, is the guy who decided, hey, I got to make a platform because the Kickstarter's doing this, but not doing that. And this platform's doing this and not doing that. I want to make a platform where you can come and bring your comic campaign, no holds barred, as long as your campaign fits the public decency.
Right.
Anybody is allowed to run a campaign on Fund My Comic, and they're welcome with open arms as long as they fit those public decency rules. Luke used to be a pastor, so you know, there's a level of decorum that everybody should maintain when you're out in the public. That's what this is.
Yeah.
But they have all kinds of different comics being offered over there for campaigns from all sorts of different people. And believe every time a new campaign pops up, it's like, wow, you know, it's just crazy. And we're really happy to be part of that.
Yeah. Very nice.
So this is Arrow Comics. It'll have an Arrow Comics in the corner. It's the Shadow Kingdom. It's an adaptation of the first sword and sorcery story that it's looked at as the first real American sword and sorcery story, the one that started the genre, by Robert E. Howard, that's in public domain. It features Kull just as he becomes king of Volusia, and he finds out that there's this crazy conspiracy to undermine his throne by a race of shape-shifting lizard people.
Nice.
And it's really the start of that urban legend as well, the shape-shifting lizard people rumors.
I believe that's now called Congress.
They
after Conan defeated them, they became American politicians.
But Russ wanted to do a barbarian story. He just got off of doing Batman for Panini over in Europe, and said, you know, I love John Buscema. I would love to do a barbarian story. And I'm like, well, you know, there's a lot of that Howard stuff that's in public domain. He says, oh, find me a story. And I said, well, there's a Kull story out there by this Axe I Rule that I would love to do because it's phenomenal, but it's not public domain. So we found Shadow Kingdom, which was the very first. It's the first Kull story, Weird Tales, 1920. I want to say 6-3 or 6 something like that. It's almost at least 100 years old. And so the verbiage in it is incredible. At times it's bombastic. The Kull is a real human character. Kull was created before Conan. In fact, the first Conan story is kind of a reworked Kull story, where Kull is isn't like Conan as much. Well, he is kind of a barbarian, but he's not as deeply rooted. He's not as Conan's not as thoughtful as Kull. Kull is always overthinking situations, always questioning himself and his motivations, where Conan's more of a, let's just go in and get it. So, in fact, Kull's buddy Brule at a couple of times in there kind of has to nudge him and point and go, just slay that. And then
it's a shape-shifting lizard person.
Yeah,
Just
exactly. Look at this guy. It's a shape-shifting lizard person. Yeah. But they talk about the old days and the ancient monsters that ruled the world and how man kind of rose up and after killing all of them as the primary species, but there's still races and monsters sitting out there in the shadows that have to be taken care of, and one of those is that serpent race. So
nice. I love the
can see
style
that.
of the artwork. You really captured that classic comic book feel.
That's all Russ. That is all Russ. And in fact, the coloring's by Russ as well. He wanted to give it a flat palette and give it that Silver Age feel to it. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how proud I am to be associated with this. We tried to keep right to Howard's story, right with Howard's prose, but it's a show don't tell. It's comics. It's not a prose book. In fact, we're going to put the prose story in behind this story in the book.
Nice.
Okay.
So the book's actually going to be over 100 pages long. But the actual story is about 70 pages.
And you also have the original art available through this, and the pen and ink, black and white, is beautiful. It's farther down near the bottom.
Russ is even willing to part with the cover in order to get this book published and get it moving.
Beautifully done.
So much fun.
The line work is spectacular. The shading, it's hard to do a pure black and white piece with so much shading involved, and he does a great job of capturing that those tones.
Well, we had a lot of discussions on what kind of format we wanted to do for this, and we still might do a couple of more artisan type books, hardcover, maybe a hardcover in black and white, or
this would look
like
spectacular in pure black and white.
Oh yeah, it does. It really does. I lettered it in black and white. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I love the way it looks. It came out great. I mean, and like Scott said, Jim, the shading.
All the artwork's done. The majority of the print file is done. I'm moving the lettering over and onto the color pages now and making sure everything lines up, and that'll be done within the next day or so, and it'll be good to go.
Awesome.
We have a forward coming in by a Howard aficionado named Razor Fist, and I will probably put a backward article in it as well, talking about Howard and how much we really respect this work.
Now, how many pages is this of just the comic aspect of it?
It's 70. 69 technically, but there's a frontis piece that's a beautiful scroll that, yeah.
Okay, and then you're going to also include, you said, the actual story then.
Yep, the prose story will be in the back of it.
Okay.
Ablaze, I don't know if you've seen the Sumerian books that Ablaze has been doing, where they're adapting Conan stories that are in public domain over in Europe. And they're doing faithful adaptions of those too. And if you've read Conan in the comics, you really have read kind of a watered down version of Conan. It's the same thing with Cull. Cull is a lot deeper. And if you've read Howard, then Howard is just a phenomenal writer. Yeah. Just unbelievable. That's why he's still popular to this day, is because that's how good of a writer he is. Even though it's prose in the last century.
Yeah.
Which I thought he had an overabundant love for semicolons. So we were going through and going, wow, that's kind of weird that he put a semicolon there and here, and yeah. So less
now
semicolons,
we just use
emojis. But the story is there. Yeah, now we'll just use emojis.
Well, the other nice thing about doing these works that are becoming public domain is a lot of these characters become so well known through pop culture, and they were changed so much due to copyright issues during the time they weren't public domain. The public has gotten to know the more popular versions. Like, for instance, with Crimson Shadows, Frankenstein has a certain, the way Universal dealt with it. But when you go to the original novel, Frankenstein, the monster, is so different than what we've come to know through pop culture. So, like, we utilized that version in our story because he's very intelligent, thoughtful, very fast. He's not this slow, lumbering creature. And so I like that you're including the original there at the back so people can read the original work itself.
Well, we're not afraid to be compared to it because we followed it really close. I think there might be one or two visual elements that slightly deviate from the actual story. The original story. But I went through and looked at the Marvel adaptation, which is beautiful. John and Marie Severin, just phenomenal stuff. And Dark Horse has adapted it in the past, but they don't capture that story. They just capture a little bit of the plot and just kind of skim across it. But the story, the character building in the book, in the story, the character relationship between Cull and Brule, is just amazing. And literally Cull opening his eyes up, because he's already seen a lot of stuff. He's gone through a lot of things. He was a slave. He was he originally started out as an Atlantean, then became kind of a vigilante, then a slave, then a pirate and a mercenary, and then kind of like Conan, and then eventually took over the throne of Valusia. But he still hasn't been able to wrap his head around shape-shifting lizard people. So he has to see it with his own eyes. And Brule has to set him straight. And Brule's the guy that Brule works for tries to set him straight as well. There's a lot of stuff going on in this world you're not aware of, son. Here you go. Yeah.
Well, awesome. I can't wait to read it myself. It looks good. Now, of course, you got 25 backers right now. You're about 23% of the way to the funding.
Yep.
We got 37 days to go.
Mm-hmm.
So we did put some links in here. We want everybody to click that and go check it out. I mean, I like the pricing you've got here. The first 50 people will get a free signed and numbered color print. I assume that's with the $25 option here.
Yeah.
And 19 backers have already done that one there. So there's still room to jump in there. Then there's the $35 reward that includes that as well for the $10 more.
That's not the, that as long as you're buying a book, you're going to get a print. Yeah.
Okay.
For the first 50. Yeah.
Yep. And then you've got other options here that include black and white prints of the cover and pre-production cover art. And like we mentioned, you're selling some of the original. There's those you have multiple copies. So this is great. So if you got a friend that you know is going to try to steal and read it, get them their own.
Great to give as a gift. It's a great single tale. It's got a definite beginning, middle, and end. It's a good done in one, I guess you would say. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to make on this. Is this isn't going to be an ongoing series. When they get the story, they're going to get the complete story in this book. So if they buy it now, it's not like you have to wait 6, 8, 12 months or more for another issue. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be, read the story it's done, and then see what else Randy comes out with next, or go back and buy some of the other stuff that Randy already has out through Arrow Comics store.
No barbarian tales that I can remember, but yeah, if this is really successful, Russ wants to do a lot more with these characters, and this really sets a foundation up for a lot of different directions to go in.
Is Cull and Conan in the same universe? I know it's the same author.
Technically, Cull is in the lineage descendant of Conan. Just like Bran McMorn is, but there's hundreds of years between the two of them. Actually, between all three of them. There's another story that's in public domain with Bran McMorn that has Cull in it, where Bran McMorn's trying to get all these tribes together for this big war and can't quite do it. And then Cull basically comes out of the mist and gets everybody together, and it's pretty much all war, the entire story. And then after the battle is done, Cull walks back into the mist. But there are all of Howard's characters are pretty much related to each other down a single timeline. There's just centuries between them.
Right. Okay.
This is before Atlantis became a huge metropolis. This is long before it became the big technical society that it became. Cull was one of the first kings of Atlantis. And this is an older kingdom, Valusia, that ends up becoming incorporated into the Atlantean kingdom, mainly because of Cull.
Okay, cool.
Now, of course, Cull, they did a movie back in the 90s.
A horrible Kevin Sorbo movie, yeah.
Yeah, well, they called it Cull the Conqueror, but it was actually adapted from a Conan story.
Yeah. Yep.
So it wasn't even an actual Cull story at that time. So
it's just like the Milius Conan movie has more reference to a Cull tale than Conan. They're kind of interchangeable. And like I said, the first Conan story is actually a reworked Cull story that he couldn't get passed through his editors because it had a romance element to it, and it was Cull, and the whole story, Cull as king of Atlantis in that story is questioning his motives and questioning his rights as a king and what makes a king and all of this until the end of the story where he goes, forget it. I'm king. I'm making rules. Get out of the way. If you want to argue with me, well, we can fight it out.
Very cool. Very good. Now, of course, you said you want to do more of this. Are you looking to continue on just adapting stories, or are you and Russ talking about
Oh
maybe
no,
creating a new story?
we want to do original stories using this book as a foundation, and we would call that the Atlantean.
Okay,
Nice.
Which actually has well, I don't want to spoil it. I won't spoil the ending for it.
Yeah.
So you read the book, you get a good
the
idea
book.
where we're gonna go, and we're gonna use that as a launching point, and we'll
Yeah,
go from there.
Talking about Conan, then there's the movie that I always thought was a Conan movie until like about 10 years ago when I rewatched it, was Red Sonja in 1985. I always thought that was a Conan movie. It was Conan and Red Sonja.
Yeah, no, that was just Arnold in another barbarian movie.
Right. I
rewatched.
I'm like, wait, he's not playing Conan?
Sonya's past is questionable. There's a few stories that Howard wrote that used forceful female characters, and one of them was Sonya. Instead, it's a Y instead of a J.
Gotcha. So it's a spin on what he did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what he did really is what played into a lot of what we know that's been spread throughout. He's been ripped off many times.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he's the creator, pretty much the creator of the sword and sorcery genre. I mean, there's a lot of other little side elements. Weird Tales was looking for Weird Tales, obviously, at the time. A big, high testosterone adventure tales was what was in the pulp magazine. And Howard wrote as many as he could to try to get, sold to Weird Tales. It was pretty prestigious pulp magazine at the time.
Well, then you've got those stories. Mm-hmm. And then you have the perfect pairing, artist-wise, with Frank Frazetta. And you had the perfect merging between art and storytelling.
Yeah.
Where I think to this day, you can't get away from that iconic look Frazetta created.
No.
Through his art.
Yeah. Yep.
It's just so beautifully done. And nothing says Conan more than, and just all the Cole and everything else than Frazetta.
That's why he was on all the paperback covers. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. And he did those intentionally for that kind of stuff. Conan Howard's work in general was always kind of an underground love for a lot of people. A lot of people tried to get those old pulp magazines. We'll try to get them now. They're like horribly expensive. I've tried to get a couple and no. But everything's reprinted by Del Rey. It's all out in fantastic paperbacks. In fact, Howard did an entire series of Westerns, did an entire series of boxing stories, though you do have to understand the context of the times because they use a lot of racial stereotypes in those stories that some nowadays would find offensive. But some of the boxing stories are just gut-wrenching hilarious. Just unbelievably funny. So nice. he did whatever he could in order to try to sell his writing. So he was in a small plains town in Texas.
Yeah.
And
it's also amazing to think back, when they created these stories.
Thank you so much.
When they created these stories, like they didn't have the outlet that we have now to get out to the public. And it's just amazing to think like 100 years ago, you're sitting there writing in your home or something, and to have a worldwide impact through your writings. It's amazing.
If you ever saw the movie Whole Wide World with Vincent D'Onofrio and Renee Zellweger, that's an over exaggeration really of Howard's career and life, but he's in it. And just imagine sitting in a small room at a small desk with a typewriter. Yet you couldn't even backspace. You couldn't wipe out entire sentences. You were stuck there typing, and in order to make your stories, and then putting it all together, binding it. No Xeroxes,
right?
Maybe carbon paper if you were lucky, and you'd have to send that out to an editor and hope that they took it.
That might be why he likes semicolons so much. The comma button might have been stuck on his typewriter.
You never know.
So he had to settle for semicolons.
Yeah. And while it's an exaggerated story on Robert Howard, it's actually, if you just look at it from a filmmaking perspective, the Whole Wide World is actually a really good movie. It
is. It's a really good. It's a little slow in parts, but it's incredibly good, especially capturing the flavor of the time that it's in. And some of the hazards that he had to go through. Doesn't really carry on his boxing, his love of boxing, or his madness for correspondence. He corresponded with a lot of the other pulp writers of the time, like H.P. Lovecraft and him had a big correspondence back and forth. I think there's actually been a book that's printed their letters back and forth, because they get real technical and they start talking about history and the ancient ones and all of this.
Oh, wow.
They really traded a lot of inspiration back and forth.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
And of course, and
if
that's
you
the thing.
love Lovecraft and you haven't read Howard, you're missing out. You need to pick up this stuff.
Definitely. Yeah, so I didn't realize they did a book. I have to find that book. It'd be an interesting read, the letters between those two, because of the amount of writing they've done over the years, and
that's like C.S. Lewis and Tolkien too. A lot of recorded documentation. So it is fascinating reading all those different things because it was such a different world, and now everything's so immediate. But it's almost like the volume of it has made it worth less now. Yeah, and but it's fascinating reading those letters to see what was the thinking behind the scenes.
In fact, it's said that when Lovecraft found out that Howard had passed, that he went into a very deep depression for quite a while.
No,
because they had never met face to face, but they exchanged tons of letters.
Wow.
See, that's what's almost amazing. I mean, nowadays you can think of that with the internet, so you hear about that all the time, especially younger people. I'm like, well, I know all these people online, but I've never met them in person. But prior to all that, when literally it's just phone calls weren't easy. Letters were the easiest thing to get something to somebody. And the fact that they never met it, they just were pen pals and corresponded the whole time.
Yep.
It's something, especially if you get two prolific writers like that. I mean, two people that really helped shape the genres of the early 20th century. That changed the world. And I mean, it's like we talked about, it wasn't easy to get it out there. That's where the pulp magazines were so popular, and that's where they were putting out the chapters through the pulp magazines, and they eventually might get collected if you were lucky. And a lot of those writer magazines, it's just, I remember reading some years ago and finding some bookstores like, wow, this is kind of neat. It's actually short stories, and you could turn, when you're a kid, and you turn on like heavy metal for the comic size and stuff like that. And a lot of that has kind of disappeared now.
Right.
It's something that I'd love to see come back, but unfortunately, it's like I said, a lot of these younger kids need to learn how to actually pick up a physical copy of a book.
Yeah.
Well, also
this was all done before comics.
Yeah.
So
also that correspondence.
All you've got is Howard's wild imagination. Sorry, go ahead.
No.
You go, Randy.
All you've got is Howard's wild imagination, and like in this story, he mentions the ancient ones, the ancient monsters, and what is going. That was put in there on purpose because of Lovecraft.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it too, just the lifestyle, like anybody under 30 probably doesn't know what it is to write a letter.
Yeah.
They've probably never experienced that.
Yep.
And growing up, when I would write letters to friends, there's a permanence to your words. So you think out your thoughts, and you really give thought to how you want to word your ideas to this person. And that was a normal form of correspondence back then. And how much were people developed into writing just from the act of corresponding with each other? Yes. Whereas now we just do very simplified text messages or quick little quips on social media. We're not really having to formulate our thoughts and think them out thoroughly on how do I present my case in this written form. Yeah. And I think that's also why back then we had such amazing writers. The normal communication was writing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, you got deeper with you were forced to, when you have a concept in your head, but you never vocalize it, it's just like random fragments, but you never have to say like, does this actually make sense logically what I'm thinking? Mm-hmm. But once you put it down, now you got to structure that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, I'm past I was born past the pulp era. And I was always, in my reading and love of comics and this media, it was always understood to me that the pulps were almost like secondary literature, just gritty, grungy, just gratuitous stuff. And you get in and you read Howard and Burroughs and Lovecraft, it's prose. I mean, it's just incredibly well-written stuff. just sit there and just admire the work that these guys put into to tell their stories. It's just incredible. If you've never read any Conan or Kull or Tarzan or any original Lovecraft, you are truly missing out on stuff. Even, and I just at the Midland Mall show, I was lucky to find some Doc Savage paperbacks for incredibly cheap. Even Doc Savage and Shadow. If you haven't read that stuff, you haven't read the foundation of comics. It's right there.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time since I read Doc Savage, but I got turned on him as a kid, and Doc Savage is brilliant writing. Always enjoyed that.
I keep hoping they'll do a serious movie with him. Dwayne Johnson was supposed to, but I think he's passed on that opportunity. And I don't know if they want him as Doc Savage after the Black Adam film anyway. But
I would rather they choose a really good B-level actor that isn't known, you know, somebody who's really good. But when you get such a well-known face into a role, it brings their past with them, you know.
He would have been almost perfect for it, and it would have changed the trajectory of his career. I'm telling you, Alan Ritchson right now, if he grew his hair out longer, and tan, he'd have to tan up. He would look like the pulp version of Doc Savage. The Rock looks more like the 60s paperback version with Obama going through and doing those paintings with him in a skull cap. You know, that really looks like when I saw Jumanji, for example, in the safari shirt that he had on, I said, man, it's got to be Doc Savage. Come on.
That's what I thought when I first saw it. It's like he's almost a character they got for was a Doc Savage-esque character in a video game.
Yeah.
So,
I just think Dwayne Johnson's ego would take over the project and ruin it. That's my problem with him.
Yep. Probably
that's what I heard with Black Adam, because he came out talking about how much of a fan he was, and then when you watch the film, going, "Well, did you actually read the comics, or you just like the way the character looked?" You know,
Yeah.
Because that's about the only thing I saw was the way the character looked, and he floated through the air very slowly, not knowing what's going on. So,
I always wondered why they used outside of the Rock's insistence, why they did a Black Adam movie in the first place, because the character was a great villain for one issue of Marvel Family.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they brought him back because who knows why, but that one issue of Marvel Family, such a complete story, they really didn't need to do anything more with him.
Yeah, and to disassociate from Shazam the Shazam movie was just ridiculous.
Yeah,
but I don't know how.
Sad to see, but what can you do?
Yeah, and so Scott and I've talked about this. We both enjoyed the Shazam movies, what they were with Zach Levi, and I think that if they had introduced the Black Adam character and in that, and then went to a full movie with them, I think it'd been better.
Yeah,
the whole philosophy, everything that came with it, the backstory, it just none of it really played out. And then stuff set in the modern times, like nobody's going to care. I mean, that's the problem. Is nobody cared about that. I went and saw it in the theater, and I walked out going, "Wow, I was just wholly disappointed in this."
Yeah.
In the original story in Marvel Family, they trick him just like Mr. Mxyzptlk. They trick him into saying Shazam. He turns back into a thousands of year old Egyptian and automatically turns to dust.
Right. You had mentioned Alan Ritchson. I hope the rumors are true that they're considering him for Batman for the new incarnation.
I really hope that they don't, because Batman's gone through enough. I'm a big I push the idea that they need to put a 10-year moratorium on any Batman movies, at least. Let people miss him a little bit and sit down and watch the older movies. And then bring him. If you use him at all, use him as an incidental character in like the Justice League or something.
Yeah,
but
he'd also make a great Aquaman. If you want to do
he was up for he was Aquaman in Smallville.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. You're right.
And he was supposed to do the pilot, but they decided to run with a more known actor.
Right.
So he didn't even get a call for the pilot, and the pilot was a disaster anyway. It's still up on YouTube. It's called Mercy Reef.
I liked him as Hawk in the Titan series.
Yep.
That's where, for me, when I saw how he played Hawk, I'm like, I could see him as Batman.
Yeah, he still had to bulk up about 30 pounds to be in Reacher, though.
Yeah.
That's why they have him without his shirt as often as possible.
He's a beast, though. He really is.
I really think if they wanted to do, Men of Bronze, I think he's at the right age for it too.
Yeah, he'd be just right. Yeah, and you get the other, because Doc Savage, if you're not familiar with the property, is a guy who's got 5 buddies, and they go around and they solve the world's problems. And if you've seen Buckaroo Banzai, you've almost seen Doc Savage.
Yeah,
because Doc Savage has got all of this knowledge about all these different sciences, and all of his 5 buddies that he picks up all has their own specialty in different fields. One's a lawyer, one's an electrician, one's an architect, one's an engineer, and they all, like I said, they travel the world solving the world's problems. It's really a great series, and if I might say, 4 years away from public domain.
Oh,
hey.
Here we are.
Something to think about.
33. First, I think 10 stories, something like that, go into public domain.
First 10 stories. Wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Same thing with The Shadow. It's coming.
And maybe that's part of why we're not seeing much of those, is the film industry is maybe waiting for public domain to go from there. So they don't have to pay anybody. So
the recognitions of the characters, the people that used to read those books are all gone now. So, or about to, leave the earth. And it's rare that somebody, unless you're into comics and you've caught those comics, even know who the characters are, or saw the movie. If you see the original Doc Savage George Pal movie, get ready to cringe a lot.
That's one from the 70s, right?
Terrible. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
The Alec Baldwin Shadow movie's not bad, but it's still, I still look at it and think 30 Rock. So
yeah, and that was before 30 Rock too.
That was long before 30, or a bit before 30 Rock. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember that one. The Shadow movie I liked well enough. It wasn't great. It definitely has flaws, but it wasn't bad. And then, but yeah, Doc Savage just has not had a proper film. Because I remember the 70s one. I've seen that a couple times.
He hasn't had his due. He's a lot better character than anybody gives him credit for. But they're afraid now to do that because the last Tarzan movie didn't do very well, and that was about as close to the actual books as you probably, outside of Greystoke with what's his name in it?
The Skarsgård.
The Skarsgård movie's really good, but it was very little seen.
Christopher Lambert was Greystoke.
Christopher Lambert, yeah.
Lambert.
That was a faithful adaptation of the first book.
Yeah, and that was a good movie. I mean, looking at it from a film side, that was definitely a good film, and had a solid cast in it too, and that helped. But the Skarsgård one, a lot of that I think was marketing more than anything. People were just what's this? Like barely marketed and just thrown aside.
Just like John Carter.
How these studios they put in all this time and effort, and then then they kill the movie through their marketing.
Well, after everything that's happened to film in the last year, should that surprise you though?
Well, not in the last year,
I mean, the way that the writing on these films in the last year has literally cost them billions of dollars.
Oh yeah,
you would think that they would learn, but they just don't seem to do it. Yeah,
the movie there, Warlord of Mars,
John Carter.
Yeah. John Carter, that should have been a hit.
Disney did a whole string of really good, real entertaining movies during that period. John Carter, Tomorrowland, and Sorcerer's Apprentice comes to mind right off the bat. Fun, great to watch, brain check films, but horribly marketed. Didn't make any money whatsoever. Yeah.
Yeah. I talked about John Carter Mars. People were like, that looked horrible. I'm like, well, it wasn't properly shown to see. You need to know a little more character and from the books. Then it was a good adaptation. But yeah, that one was good. Tomorrowland was good. That one I've watched back a couple times.
Just a solid story. Brad Bird, I think he's a lot better director than anybody gives him credit for.
Well, yeah, and I tell people that, and they think he's just some animation guy. I'm like, no, he can do live action too, and you go back, and he's a good storyteller, and he knows how to visually bring it out, whether it's animation or live action.
Yep.
And I think the other thing that hurt John Carter was the timing of it coming out. People who didn't know the history of it, they're like, well, that's like the scenes of the fighting there in the ground and stuff. It looked a lot like the battle scene in the arena for Star Wars Episode 2. It's like, well, this is just ripping off Star Wars. Like, no, this came out first.
See, really the other way around.
It's the other way around. Most science fiction is ripping off John Carter.
But the name itself is too plain as well. They should have just called it Warlord of Mars, and it would have
nobody knew who John Carter was.
Yeah. Well, everybody knows who John Carter is. It's the guy on ER.
Yeah. Right? That's it.
Yeah. But I pulled it up just to look at it. I mean, realistically, it wasn't a hit. It has a $250 million budget, pulled in 284. So I mean, technically they lost money because they don't calculate in the marketing budget for that.
Yeah, but I was going to say it didn't even cover its marketing costs, but
I liked it. I've watched it a few times.
It's on Disney Plus, I believe. It's well worth the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I bought it when it came out on. I know I've got at least DVD, stuff like that. But yeah, it's on Disney Plus. You can rent it on other services too, and things like that. I'm sure you can buy it on digital somewhere if you want to buy it digitally. But if you can find a physical copy, it's well worth owning. And I liked it. I was surprised that when I told people about it, go see it, and they're like, "Oh no!" And then when they finally see it, like, "Oh my god, that really was good." I'm like, "Yep, told you."
Solid beginning, middle, and end. It's it's got its tropes in it, but a lot of those tropes that it uses were tropes that were overused in everybody else's films already. But Carter was first,
Carter was first.
Yeah. And it's in the public domain now for some of those stories. So they could be adapted too. Who knows? So Randy, hey, this has been a lot of fun, Randy. We appreciate you coming on anytime.
Are we done already? Holy crap.
Yeah, it's been an hour.
Wow. Okay. I talk comics. I can do that for hours. So yeah.
Oh, I know. And you're welcome to come on anytime. Let us know when you want to come on.
I'm a vampire. I go wherever I'm invited, buddy. So just have me on. Stake a date. Tell me I'm on. I'll be there.
Oh, well, the invitation's out there. If you don't hear from us, just reach out. But I'll try to get you on a little more often and talk some comics.
I will. When I saw you at Great Lakes show, I went, hey, I need to be on their podcast.
And
definitely. Been too long. Yeah.
And we've talked about it a couple of times, having to have you back on here sometime. And once I got to figure out, we'll have to figure out sometime. Oh gosh, I'm blanking name, but another not in the comics, but knows comics from the Ypsilanti area. Rubenfeld, Mr. Rubenfeld. He knows comics. Get you and him on here and start talking comics. He was in New York during the heyday of the '60s and knew all the greats out there.
Yeah.
So I figure we can get you guys on and go, and Scott and I'll just sit back and watch.
He's before me then. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I do have a quick question, trying to get a scoop for the Odd Musings listeners. Sure. So any plans for Flint Comic-Con?
None. Sorry. I wish we could. Show. I would do a one-day show again. The wife gave me permission last year to do the one-day show, and believe me, I need that permission.
Yeah.
Because before I wasn't, if you know my situation, I was unhealthy and building back my health. And we were talking about doing a show. And one day she said, why don't you just do a show? And I'm like, oh, okay. So I went back to the market and we couldn't agree on a proper date, the April date that I wanted. They had available. And then the Grand Rapids show in Kalamazoo was on that weekend. And I tried to schedule another date after that. And it was right in what they called their wedding season. And they didn't want me to take a weekend unless I wanted to pay full price for the rental. And I said, if I did that, I'd have to charge more for admission and more for table costs. And I really don't want to have to do that. Because those shows, we did about 10 of them total. Those shows were just fun. They were just there to have fun, to bring people in, to spread comics and fun. And everybody, all the dealers made almost all the dealers. I had one that was that complained, but he had high prices on his stuff. Everybody there, most everybody there had a lot of fun, made a lot of money, and it was.
We loved how the community always supported the show as well.
That too, yes.
You had the locals coming out. It was always a different crowd. Like a lot of Comic-Cons we do, you get the same group of people just at different shows. So you're trying to sell to the same people in all the different shows you do. But Flint was truly a local show. And
well, I was real fortunate to build up that readership with the paper.
Yeah.
So we moved 10,000 copies of every issue of that paper just within a 25-mile radius of Flint.
Yeah.
We had, and I'd get maybe 100 or 200 or 300 back and I insisted on taking returns so I can give them away at shows. But that paper, I'm telling you, reinstilled my love for this art form, because after it took a little while for it to catch on, 6-7 issues or so. Issue 5, I remember, almost didn't make it. But once it caught on, it it caught on like wildfire, and there were people that just loved that paper, and it really hurt me it hurt me to have to stop it the first time, which was about issue 58 or so, when everything just collapsed at once. Then it just kept it going through issue 100. Last year or so, it was bi-monthly, just so I could get up to that point, because it was really starting to tap my savings and I had to stop it. But those annual conventions were always fun. It was always meant to be a good time. And I think we really achieved that goal. Yeah.
I loved it. And
we'll do it.
Money.
I might do it again. The show we had up in Saginaw before the bug hit was incredibly successful. They asked me to come back up there the year after. And I told them I couldn't do it because we would turn it into a super spreader event, because everybody was just literally shoulder to shoulder. Now, I've only been to one other convention that was like that, and that was the first Grand Rapids Con, where he underestimated the size of and the attention of the crowd, and everybody was literally scrunched in. I mean, you were doing this in order to go through the crowd. It's the same thing up in Saginaw. It was a great show. But I told them I couldn't do it. They had somebody else do it that was really just fumbled the ball. And I just can't do another one up there without running into a lot of hassle. So, sorry to see that happen too. But we have the really cool Comic-Con up here in Flint now. I guess he's doing it again this year, even though last year had its big series of disasters.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens. You never know. I might do another one-day show. I won't do a 2 or 3 day show unless I've got some capital to back me and some folks to help me. So
I personally like the 1 day shows like that. I think it, especially when we're dealing just comics, you're not worried about bringing in some big celebrity guest or something like that. It's unless they're a comic guest. That's what worked about Flint Comics it was just comics, and you had enough of us creators there. You had good vendors. Like I said, the locals that came in were always great, and especially when it tied into the superhero run. And the fact that it was in the Flint Farmers Market, which is a great farmers market. So.
The best. I mean, any kind of food that you'd ever want was there.
Yeah, that's what we like going was because we eat all day long.
There you are. Yeah,
I think one of the big mistakes
that was one of the attractions of the show. That's how I'd get the dealers in. It's going to be
one of the big mistakes I think comic promoters do is they all think they have to grow to become the next San Diego Comic-Con. Yeah, and every show has its niche for its market, and it's okay to grow to a certain size and then just be that show and have your own persona. Yes. You don't have to turn into the next. Not everyone has to have 40 A-listers for signings and 5-day shows and open till 8 p.m. every single night. And you don't have to do that for every Comic-Con out there.
And those shows are starting to get very distressing to me. For one, you're seeing less and less comic dealers out there, setting up at these shows, which is a shame. And for
turning into signing shows.
Yeah, that's the next thing. You're getting less and less comic book people. That's why I really love the Great Lakes Con, is they had actual comic book people there. Some guys like Tim Vigil, I haven't seen face to face for 20, 25 years. It was so great to see him again.
Yeah.
You know, good to see you up. Good to see you walking. What are you working on? You know, good to see you in the flesh. And had Larry Stroman walk over. And we've never talked before. He comes over and goes, "I recognize your name. You're a friend of mine on Facebook. I like your posts." Thanks, man.
I like seeing Larry Stroman there because I ain't seen him. He was at Motor City when the Tribe first came out 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the last times I saw him. May have seen him once or twice since then, but I don't remember as much.
I haven't seen Todd Johnson face to face in like 25 years too. Walked over, looks exactly the same. I was stunned. Says, "You look exactly like you did 25 years." What the
He's
heck?
a clone.
He must be.
That's why I like doing Mike's show. Mike's Great Lakes Comic Expo. He brings in some great comic book guys and gals.
Well, he knows what he is for a show, and he sticks to it. And so there's you go there knowing what the show is, and as a vendor, it's nice to know what you can expect too. You know, so
it's because he loves comics, man.
He does.
You can tell.
That's
those people with the passion. That's just like us, you know. They get it in our blood, and but it has. You just go from there. So
Oh yeah, fantastic. Well, one quick more look on and we'll get going here. You got 26 backers now.
The link one more time.
Appreciate it, everybody. Thank you so much. Go over and look at the Shadow Kingdom, adapted from the story by Robert E. Howard. Yes. First Cull adventure. We don't have Cull on the cover for copyright trademark reasons, but it's the story. It's a phenomenal story. It's Cull and it's Brule and it's shape-shifting lizard people.
Yep. That's awesome.
Very good.
Lots and lots of fun.
Yep, I'm looking forward to getting my copy. I contributed last night. I know Brett's contributed. Kevin has. So we're all can't wait to receive it so we can read the adventures of Cull in the Shadow Kingdom.
As it was meant to be seen too, because like I said, we keep to the story and we use as much of the prose in there and into the story as possible.
Nice.
Yeah, we'll check back in over the next few weeks on Musings and see how it's doing and keep everybody updated on that. Randy, thanks again for joining us, man. Anytime. You just let us know.
Thanks for having me. Love being here, man. Love, and you know me, love talking comics. So.
Exactly. And we'll see you all next week. Bye.
Take care.